What is the airspeed velocity of an eagle laden with the One Ring? Trick question. No eagle is volunteering to haul that into Mordor. Welcome to Fool of a Tube. We're glad you're here. Now, grab a snack and settle in. Today we're exploring who the great eagles are, who they answer to, and most importantly, why they could never simply swoop in to drop the One Ring into Mount Doom. If you love uncovering hidden corners of Middle-earth and untold lore, hit subscribe now and ring the notification bell to be the first to join every new adventure. Long before any hobbit set out from the Shire, there were giants of sky and spirit patrolling Middle-earth. The great eagles trace their origin to a conversation between Manwë, Lord of Air, and Yavanna, Vala of growing things. After Aule's creation of the dwarves, Yavanna worried that her Kelvar and Olvar, her beasts and trees, would have no champions against the darkness. Manwë took up her plea, and Ilúvatar granted life to mighty eagles as messengers and spies of the Vala. There shall go forth with wings like the wind the eagles of the lords of the West, Tolkien writes in the Silmarillion. Thorondor, greatest of the eagles, earned his name in the First Age by assisting Fingon in the rescuing of Medros at the peaks of Thangorodrim. Fingon stood beneath Medros's chained hand, ready to climb the precipice alone, when he cried out to Manwë. Thorondor answered that plea by swooping down to bear Fingon aloft. Later, he freed Medros from torment and carried him to safety. Tales of his deeds cast a long shadow over elven lore and set a pattern for eagle intervention in moments of dire need. By the Third Age, later generations of eagles carried on that same duty. Gwaihir the Wind Lord served Gandalf himself. When Saruman held Gandalf atop Orthanc, Gwaihir discovered him because Radagast had sent word of the wizard's fate. I was sent to bear tidings, not burdens, Gwaihir reminded Gandalf as he lifted him from the tower. Yet he carried Gandalf to safety, first to the Vales of Anduin, then later from Ziraxigil, because the task aligned with Manwë's will. These eagles aren't ordinary birds. They are Maiar, spirits akin in origin to the wizards and Balrogs, but choosing to take eagle form at Manwë's command. Think of them as angelic protectors who decide for themselves when to help. They speak their own language, soar by their own will, and answer only to the Vala, so they're no one's personal air taxi. While they resemble a sudden last-minute rescue, they aren't simply tools at anyone's beck and call. They exist on a higher plane than men, elves, or hobbits. When Manwë, or the needs of Middle-earth, call, they become agents of hope, arriving like a beacon even when all seems lost. Now that we've explained who the eagles are, you might still wonder, couldn't they have done it anyway? One daring flight, one perfect drop into Mount Doom, and the whole war is over before Frodo finishes his second breakfast. It's a fair question, and it was indirectly addressed at one of the highest levels of council in Middle-earth. At Rivendell, when the Free Peoples gathered to decide the fate of the ring, this kind of shortcut was already on everyone's mind. At the Council of Elrond, when Elrond's chief counselor, Erestor, says the idea of finding Mount Doom's fire is folly, Gandalf counters, "Well, let folly be our cloak, a veil before the eyes of the enemy, for he is very wise and weighs all things to a nicety in the scales of his malice. But the only measure that he knows is desire. Into his heart the thought will not enter that any will refuse it, that having the ring we may seek to destroy it. If we seek this, we shall put him out of reckoning." In other words, a flashy tactic like sending an eagle straight into Mordor would play exactly into Sauron's warped logic. Sauron measures everything by his hunger for power, assuming the same desire in everyone else. Spotting an eagle flying straight for Mordor would set off enough alarm bells to summon Ulmo himself to a council. Sauron, having encountered the eagles in ages past, would instantly recognize any soaring eagle as a sign of divine intervention and unleash his full might. Elrond then follows up with another insight. This quest may be attempted by the weak with as much hope as the strong. Yet such is often the course of deeds that move the wheels of the world. Small hands do them because they must, while the eyes of the great are elsewhere. He implies that whether a handful of hobbits or a legion of warriors sets out, if the great become visible, Sauron's focus shifts. We see this later when Aragorn deliberately takes the Palantir from Pippin to draw Sauron's gaze away from the idea of halflings. A powerful, winged champion swooping overhead would broadcast, "Ring in transit," louder than any horn blast. Instead, the Fellowship needed to move as quietly as possible under Sauron's radar, like thieves in the night rather than heralds under a banner. Even if someone had tried to sneak the ring into Mordor by air, the skies weren't empty. They were watched. From the moment Sauron's forces began to stir, the Nazgul took to the air on their winged mounts. These 9 wraiths didn't patrol randomly. They were instructed to hunt and find. Gandalf calls them a spear of terror in the hand of Sauron, shadow of despair, and for good reason. Their presence unnerved armies and shattered courage. While Pippin watches from the walls of Minas Tirith with Beregond, they see the Nazgul swooping after Faramir and his men as they race toward the city gates. Beregond cries out in alarm, praising Faramir's courage, but fearing the worst. Brave heart, but how can he win the gate if these foul hell-hawks have other weapons than fear? If an eagle had appeared anywhere near Mount Doom, the Nazgul would have been upon it faster than you can say, "Fly, you fools." And the sky was only part of the problem. On the ground, Mordor was covered in watchtowers and guard posts. Orcs manned battlements and ridgelines with bows drawn. An eagle flying low enough to drop someone into the cracks of Doom would have been well within range. There would have been no element of surprise, only a high-value target announcing itself for miles. But let's say, somehow, the eagle made it. It flew over the mountains, dodged Nazgul, and threaded through clouds of arrows. The ring still couldn't be tossed in from the sky. It had to be taken into the heart of Mount Doom, into the fire where it was forged. Only Frodo could do that. Not because he was chosen by prophecy, but because the ring had to be carried by someone small enough to go unnoticed, and strong enough to resist it, just long enough. If the ring had been entrusted to an eagle, the outcome might have been worse. The eagles are mighty, but they're not immune to temptation. As spirits in the form of birds, they carry enormous power, and the ring would have sensed it. Corruption wasn't limited to men. If the ring could twist the hearts of elves and wizards, it would have turned an eagle into a dark force in the sky, making the fell beasts of the Nazgul look like My Little Pony. When Frodo finally reached Mount Doom, the only reason the eagles could fly in at all was because the remaining 8 Nazgul had left. Sauron's attention shifted, just as Elrond hoped it would. And in that sliver of distraction, the skies opened. The eagles swooped in, not as warriors in a battle plan, but as rescuers when the work was already done. That timing wasn't coincidence. It was the only moment it could ever have worked. To an outside observer, using the eagles might seem like the most efficient plan. A direct flight into Mordor would have spared lives, shortened the journey, and eliminated the need for stealth. But Tolkien didn't write with tactical efficiency in mind. His goal wasn't to solve a problem with speed. It was to tell a story rooted in struggle, sacrifice, and moral weight. In a 1958 letter, Tolkien addressed this idea head-on. He referred to the eagles as a dangerous machine. What he meant was a literary mechanism, something that resolves the plot from outside the world's internal logic. In storytelling, this is called deus ex machina, a device where an unexpected force appears to resolve a conflict that characters cannot. Tolkien found this technique unearned and artificial, which is why he limited the eagles to moments where no other intervention would make sense. He applied this principle with consistency. The eagles do not appear to prevent danger, but to confirm that the danger was real and unavoidable. Their arrival at Mount Doom doesn't cancel the journey, it follows it. Frodo has already fallen. Gollum has already seized the ring. The eruption has already begun. At that point, there is nothing left to influence. Gwaihir comes not to change the outcome, but to carry home what remains. Tolkien's preference for restraint comes from how he viewed myth. The eagles were not written as a solution to conflict. They were part of what he called eucatastrophe, a sudden turn toward grace in the face of destruction. These moments don't erase pain. They arrive after pain has run its course, when everything else has failed. This preserves the emotional shape of the story and allows courage to matter. Using the eagles at the beginning would have hollowed that structure. There would be no reason for Sam to follow Frodo through the ash, or for Aragorn to draw Sauron's eye at the Black Gate. There would be no weight behind Gollum's fall. If the ring could be flown to its doom, the story becomes a question of logistics instead of conviction. Tolkien said he cordially disliked allegory in all its manifestations and preferred history, true or feigned, with its varied applicability to the thought and experience of readers. History doesn't solve itself with perfect timing or aerial deliveries. It unfolds in fear, loss, and quiet endurance. The eagles come at the end not because they were withheld, but because that is when they belong. Tolkien's restraint in using the eagles speaks to more than just structure. It reflects a deeper conviction about how stories mirror lived experience. In Middle-earth, as in life, there are no shortcuts to redemption. Triumph arrives after effort, not instead of it. So, when the skies finally open, they do not offer a way out. They offer a way home. If you enjoyed this exploration into one of the most talked about points in all of Tolkien's lore, hit subscribe and ring the bell so you won't miss our next Middle-earth deep dive. Drop a comment below and let us know. What other lore have you always been curious about? In the shadows of Mordor, it wasn't the thunder of eagles, but the humble footsteps of two halflings that changed everything. An airborne delivery to Mount Doom might seem like the right choice when your quest stands on the edge of Occam's razor. Yet stray but a little into nuance, and the argument will fail. Courage did not come from the skies, but moved in silence. It was those small hands that bore hope into the heart of darkness, when the great and terrible could not. Thanks for watching this episode of Fool of a Tube. May your roads lie gentle beneath starlit skies, and may your tales be told wherever hearts gather.